It's been over a year since I clocked out for the final time for my job at Disneyland. An entire year has passed, and a lot has changed. I've watched from the sidelines as friends left my old job, while others got promoted. I've created an entire podcast talking about my time as an attractions cast member. I've even created a ton of other different types of content, and truly enjoyed my time away from Disney. That just leaves me with one last thing. Finally turning the page from my cast member life and ending my series with this final episode. Now you may be asking what this episode will be about. Well, it's mainly a reflection piece, talking about what I've done over the past year since leaving my job. It's also a piece where I talk about some of the stuff that didn't really fit into the themes of each episode. It's sort of a grab bag of miscellaneous things from both my time as, working there, as well as reflecting on the many things that have happened since leaving and the whole how do I feel a year later sort of thing. As I am writing this, we are on this journey together, and as I am recording my lines, this is a little bit of improv here, you're in for quite the journey, I guess. I don't know exactly, how this finale is gonna be received, but we're finally here. We're at the very end of a series that has a personal connection to me, even if it's not my most highly produced series, so. Anyway, just some housekeeping things like every episode. There's timestamps in the description and on the video itself for those who like to skip around. As always, this is an audio-based podcast with B-roll footage on screen. I did shoot some new footage for this finale, but it probably won't have any correlation for what I'm talking about on screen, but hey, some new footage to look at, I guess. Also, there will be some things that might be relevant to what I'm talking about for later in the episode, and you'll get what I'm talking about, and I might mention it while recording, but I haven't got to recording those lines yet, so. And anyway, enough blabbering. Let's get started with a quick recap for those who happen to only stumble upon the series right now. A quick recap. If you have listened to the entire series, or just the first episode in the series, this is a chapter that you can probably skip, as this will primarily be for the newer viewers, or those who want a quick refresh. Now with that out of the way, I worked in Tomorrowland attractions at the Disneyland Resort in Anaheim, California, for over 4.5 years. I hired into Autopia, learned Monorail a month before the park shut down, and came back after the pandemic to learn Star Tours a month later. I was also a lead at the Monorail for a good 6 months before I lost my status, and that was the first domino that brought me to quitting 9 months later. If you are wondering about more details with all the stuff that I'm talking about, I would recommend giving the first episode in the series a listen. It basically covers my entire customer journey from start to finish, all boiled down into a little 2-hour podcast thingy with about 26 chapters to break everything up. The rest of the episodes go more into the crazy guest details of what they did at my attractions, as well as the cast member side of each of my attractions, like what was it like working these attractions. Lastly, while it's not actually in the series, I would also recommend my side tangent episode on the downfall of Disney parks. That is a video essay on my thoughts and opinions of how the parks have been going, as well as giving some more insight from a former cast member. Now, you can just ignore me and just keep listening, but you do you, man. I just recommend the first episode in this podcast at the very minimum, just so you won't be completely lost, but hey man, you do you. Now with all of that out of the way, we can officially get started on this weird ass finale of my cast member podcast. So sit back, relax, and listen to me ramble about stuff for the next however many minutes. It's about an 18-page script, so maybe it'll be in like the hour range, so we'll find out. Okay, cool beans. Commuting, health, and personal daily life. This chapter is going to focus on the stuff I didn't cover in any of the episodes. Yeah, some of them might have had like a brief mention here and there, but not really was explained in much detail. Starting off with commuting. For basically a vast majority of my time working at the park, I was commuting from my mom's house. I did live close by the park for a good 1.5 years, but that was short-lived as the pandemic took up a huge chunk of it. So realistically, I was only commuting to work for a good 3 months before everything shut down. So, without trying to dox myself too much, I live about 60 miles away from Disneyland. On a good day, I would get to work in about an hour, and on a bad day, it could be up to 3 hours. That also works with going home as well. To be safe, I would always leave about 2.5 hours before my shift started, sometimes more depending on what time I work and what I need to do before starting my shift that's on property. It didn't really help my commute that I tended to work a bunch of messed up hours, and that really had a toll on my health, but I'll get into that later in this chapter. For those that aren't from the Southern California area and would like an estimate on traffic, any time outside of rush hour was more or less fine. If you travel during rush hours, well, you're going to be sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic moving extremely slow depending on what freeway you took. I primarily commuted on the 91 freeway, and if anybody knows what that hellscape is, you can picture it already, especially with all the construction that's going on. Hoo-wee. Now, this was just for pre-pandemic though. Post-pandemic traffic is a goddamn nightmare, and all the rules I just said are out, null and void. While rush hours were still bad, the rest of the time could be a mixed bag of traffic. You got the Captain Crunch cereal and oops, all traffic. I'm sort of exaggerating a bit, but since so many people moved out to the county I live in, and during the pandemic, it just seems like the old rules of traffic have been multiplied by freak you, but then divided by a whole lot of why isn't this car moving? God damn, I hate this freeway. Listen, there are a crap ton of videos online about commuting in Orange County, LA County, San Bernardino County, and Riverside County, as I pretty much touched all of them during my commute in one way or another. And that also depended on which route I take too, because the 10 freeway and the 210 freeway and the 91 freeway, I did take those as well, but my main freeway was the 91. But yeah, you get the idea if you have ever seen California traffic. It's as bad as they say it is. I preferred to work the night shift so I wouldn't have to sit in traffic coming home from work. I would say I had a balance of all shifts though, from morning, mid, and night. Yeah, I even had the stupid early morning shifts and the overnight shifts from time to time, but traffic wasn't usually terrible for those both ways, depending on what time I started or got off. To make things simple, and just for the sake of this video, my morning commutes were about an hour and a half there, with being, 2.5 hours coming back. Yeah. My mid commutes were usually closer to an hour, usually just a little bit more depending on what time I started, as most of my shifts, mid shifts were 1100 to 1930 or 12:15 to 20:45. I'm using military time, so yeah. Lastly, my night shifts were smooth sailing with about an hour heading out there and 50 minutes heading back because, pedal to the metal. That's because my shifts though are also usually 16:45 to 1:15 or 1500 to 1:30 late. Yeah, then I had my weird car wash shifts at Auto, which were 500 to 10 o'clock, or 500 to 13:30, and the cycling shifts for Auto and Mono, which were these weird 12:30 at night, midnight to 6:30 in the morning. I loved those shifts because I never had to talk to a single guest and I never sat in traffic, but I would say I only got 10 of those during my entire time at the resort, which was 4.5 years. Well, how exactly does health come into play for this? Well, at Disney, we had something called the 10-hour turnaround, which means you can come into work 10 hours after you just clocked out from your last shift. So let's just say I was off at midnight, I could come back in at 10 o'clock the next day, or pretty much the same day at that point. This was extremely common for me, especially post-pandemic, and at the Monorail, as I would close the night before, only to come in 10 hours later to bring out the same train I put away the night before, as we were still on reduced hours for the Monorail, we were only open from park opening to 7. So, of course I could end up doing both, pretty much. Now, you could be called in even earlier than the 10-hour window, but they would have to pay you double time for every hour that is before your 10th hour. This only happened to me a small handful of times and was extremely rare because the company doesn't like giving out more money than it's legally required to. The worst turnaround I've ever had at this job was being the closing lead at the Monorail, which was off at 1:30 in the morning, only to have to open it 4 hours later at 5:30 in the morning. Yep, you heard that right. I was apparently the only available lead for the morning shift, even though I was supposed to be the mid the following day, which was also breaking the 10-hour turnaround rule, so I was getting 30 minutes of double time. So not only was I the closing lead the night before, but I had to come in literally 4 hours later to be both the opening and the mid lead, all for the closing lead to call out, and I said, nah, I'm going home, bro. A manager ended up taking over the attraction around 4:30 and letting me go home early. I mean, cause there was no way I was gonna close, open, mid, close again. Yeah, nah, man. So, to give you an idea, I got to work at, 16:30 or 4:30 the day before. So I was there for 24 goddamn hours, with only 4 of them being unpaid while I waited in the break room to start my next shift. So, that was fun. Oh yeah, it's also worth mentioning that I had a baby at home, so I had to take over for my wife the following day, as it was her turn to work, as she worked weekends when I was full-time. Now looking back at it, I should have told them just to figure it out and went home for the night, but I was a big stupid idiot that wanted to make sure I had extra money for my family, as this was also around the holiday season. Oh well, live and learn, as they say in Sonic or something. As you can guess, I was heavily sleep deprived a lot of this job, and having a kid during it didn't really help. Now, parents will understand the feeling, so not only was my sleep all messed up from this job, but I was also working these wonky schedules every week where, the fact that I didn't really get many days off was also a factor towards my health. I worked a ton of overtime even before my daughter was born, and I would average about 43 to 46 hours a week. Now, I'm not trying to flex, but I just want to iterate that we were short-staffed post-pandemic, especially at the Monorail, because of how many people were quitting. I believe there was a point where I was pretty much working 13 days in a row, like every other week, after that 13 days, with some of them being 10 to 12-hour shifts. My only day of rest wasn't really, long enough to recover, and that's just the harsh truth of it, man. On top of, being sleep deprived and me working these really weird hours, I was not eating the healthiest, as you could probably guess. Now, yes, this was 100% on me, but when you have this fluctuating schedules for most of your shifts, basically open mid, close, close mid, open, just back and forth, fast food becomes an easier option, as you could probably guess. I would normally pack my lunch/dinner for work, depending on obviously what time I worked. So sometimes it was lunch, sometimes it was my dinner. Yeah, but I really never ate at home, and so I would always get, fast food before my shift. Yeah, not super proud of it, but I would eat your typical American fast food places like McDonald's, Taco Bell, KFC, Burger King, Arby's, Baker's, A&W, Del Taco, and the list keeps going on and on and on and on. You can imagine one of these for, 5 to 6 days out of the week. Every week over a few year period wasn't the best for my health in that aspect. The only upside was that I would walk an average of, 12,000 steps or more a day, depending on what attraction I was at. So that's the only upside that I can say about this. Oh yeah. Pre-pandemic, I had a severe right shoulder pain from my job at Amazon that, unfortunately never got addressed because of their terrible HR and medical departments at the warehouses, but I'm not going to get into that because then this video's runtime would double in length because Amazon's warehouses are a terrible place to work for. Anyway, the only upside with that shoulder pain that I was having, as it seemed to heal itself after a week-long vacation pre-pandemic, but it does occasionally flare up from time to time post-pandemic and even now, but it's nothing as bad as it was before. Like, I couldn't even like move my arm of how bad the shoulder pain was. It was like it felt like a torn muscle or maybe rotocuff injury. I couldn't really tell you, but I know I dislocated my shoulder at the warehouse. So something was up with it because popping it back into place was extremely painful. It's okay though, a new type of pain would arise from Disney, and that was the repetitive motion I would do with my wrists. Now, this wrist pain isn't the wrist pain that I was having when I landed on my left wrist and shattered my phone for being an idiot, but this was actually my right wrist was starting to get the early stages of carpal tunnel syndrome and probably arthritis from driving the monorail so much and basically waving my right wrist around a lot. This was also a very common issue, as a lot of the veteran cast members from the monorail also had this problem, and one even had to get like surgery for their wrist pain. To give you an idea of how bad it is, I'm still having wrist problems with my right wrist today, but it's not as bad as it once was while I was working, because I've had the free time to get it healed and let it rest over this past year. That just goes with, everything of having the free time, which was extremely difficult while working at Disney as well. Just something to mention as well, I was considered part-time from hiring in back in May of 2019 to January of 2022, but I was working full-time hours even though I was considered part-time on paper. I was scheduled an average of like 28 to 30 hours a week, but I would always pick up or trade for longer shifts to make sure that I got that sweet 40 hours. Some weeks I was scheduled more than 40 hours even without training, but that was not as common as you think it was as a part-timer. But when I eventually did get full-time, I didn't have to worry about trading for more hours, as I was now getting scheduled more hours, especially from February 2022 to November of 2022, because I was regularly getting like 48 hours or more a week. So that was fun. Not a lot of room for free time for myself outside of work. It was to the point where it was more common to see me in my work uniform than it was to see me in my regular street clothes. This is also why videos slowed down significantly during my time there, as I was just going to work. Yes, early 2020 was for my apartment, but the pandemic ate into most of that. It was just this unhealthy obsession with this job, and it all goes back to these three things at the end of the day. I didn't know how to just work less, and it was slowly chipping away at my overall health, both physically and mentally. I didn't really snap out of it until I got my lead status taken away from me, and the eventual return to real part-time work later that year. Getting to spend more time with my daughter and actually getting the chance to play games and make videos and watch movies when I had free time was truly what I needed to really focus on what made me happy. I missed pretty much the first year of my daughter's life because I was a big stupid idiot and I worked way too much. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed my job and it was a very hard decision to leave, but that 9-month fallout I pretty much set me on that course. I will talk about my overall thoughts of leaving towards like the end of the video and go into a little bit more detail with that whole aspect, but for now let's move on to the next topic of coworkers side of things. Coworkers, Facebook, and Hangouts. Now, this portion of this episode will be more focused on the positive side of coworkers, as most didn't really fit into my working the attractions arc portion of the series. I met a lot of great people at this job, especially those who I worked with. I would name drop them here and give them shoutouts, but they know who they are, as they're still friends with me on Facebook. I know it sounds really boomer of me to also bring up Facebook, but this was actually a very essential part of working at Disney, but I'll get into that in a moment. Obviously, when you work with the same group of people every day for 8 hours or more, you tend to get to know these people a bit more. Yes, most of them just acquaintances, but I did make a few friends who I still talk to and hang out with even a year after leaving my job. I even have a text group with my 2 closest friends from that job, and one of them played the main antagonist in my upcoming feature film. He no longer works for Disney though, as he quit back in August, but my other buddy still works there. So I do somewhat know what's going on at the resort even after leaving, especially in attractions that I used to work. I guess you can say that a lot of these people were my work family, and they are one of the few reasons it was extremely difficult to leave my job. Aside from working together, we would all get late night Denny's or IHOP together after our shifts, as they were both right across the street. I remember there was this one night where I went with my buddy that I mentioned earlier and 2 other coworkers to get some wings from this random restaurant down the street, and we ended up talking about anime for a good 2 hours with the occasional joke about what type of guests we dealt with for the day. We also had these days where we would go into the park on our off days or before/after our shifts to go on the rides as a unit. This would be small groups of 4 to big old groups of 12. There are even occasional nights of exclusive park time where the company had these after-hour parties for us, and we would all get to hang out with people from our attractions in different lands, and, each of the 2 parks. It was mainly California Adventure, but I know they did stuff for Disneyland very seldomly. This did start to slow down for me a bit after I had a kid, but I do remember all these fun times very fondly. One of my good friends, who hasn't been mentioned yet, would also have these cool house parties for his birthday or random different holidays. He even had a few Smash Brothers tournaments that I participated in. I didn't really start going to these until after I had my kid, and even after I quit Disney, but it's always nice seeing some of the people I used to work with again. Oh yeah, in case you were wondering, I was always in the top 3 with these Smash tournaments because I'm a tryhard. I main Joker, Pyramithra, and Grey Ninja, so get on my level, scrubs. It's also worth mentioning that we did have virtual Zoom meetups every Friday nights during the pandemic, for Autopia specifically, and that's how a lot of us kept in touch. I also had a Discord server running for a hot moment, but I took it down due to lack of interest, as the Facebook groups were pretty much fine. Plus, I didn't want to have to run a server like that, especially if I wasn't going to be at Disneyland forever. That leads me into my next topic, which is Facebook. Facebook was very crucial to my job, both because of the messenger on the site as well as the groups. We used private Facebook groups for our attractions to trade shifts with each other, as well as keep up with bigger attraction news. These weren't officially run by the company, but usually by the leads and or trainers of the attractions. I know this was a common thing for other attractions in other lands, but I don't know if other departments used Facebook like we did in attractions. Now, for obvious reasons, I am no longer part of the shift trading Facebook groups, but I am still part of the meme pages or the more relaxed vibe groups that I also was in. We had 2 different types of groups for every attraction. One specifically meant for shift trading, and one being more meme centered or other general updates like this person just got lead or hey, we're having a potluck tomorrow sort of thing. But you get the idea. I also made a handful of memes and other posts on these pages. Most of these memes are centered around attraction-specific jokes on something related to it, so they might fly over your heads unless you're more into specific theme park lingo. Hopefully I put that up while I was editing this, but yeah, you can see how dumb some of these are. I also kind of wish I still had access to the shift trading page, but I'm no longer a cast member, so there's no reason I should be on those anyway. In fact, I was actually booted out of the Monorail one because they're a little bit more strict with who's on that one and not, but I left the Auto and Star Tours one on my own accord because I don't want people shift trading clogging up my feed, not that I really use Facebook much anymore. But I just remember that we would always do this meme thing with each other, as we would do the laughing reaction whenever someone posted a shift trade, specifically on the Monorail page when they were trying to trade a different attraction for Monorail. We would always have this bit where we would sit there and laugh at each other, like, oh please, I want to go to this, I want to go to Monorail, but I'm stuck at Auto. And we would laugh at them on Facebook, and then we'd laugh at them as we saw them down at the Auto attraction, as Tomorrowland station from Monorail is right above the Auto attraction, so we'd point and laugh online and point and laugh in real life. It was just a fun time. We all had our goose and gas, and don't worry, this was used against me a ton, and it was always funny to me even if I was on the other side of it, the one being laughed at. Now, these other pages I am still part of are mainly meant for both current and former cast members from those attractions, while the other ones that I did mention were specifically for shift trading. There were also some other groups that I was in, like one for the entire land, one for my land scheduling, one for leads specifically that I didn't really know about, and one for the union I was a part of. Facebook was weirdly integral to my job, but in an indirect way. It was just the easiest way for everyone to connect with each other, and I feel like really using social media for good in this sort of instance. Not for like the other things that I won't get into this video. Prior to hiring into Disney, and even now, I don't really use Facebook all that much aside from setting up posts for my fan page about a new video. Now, just to go on a quick side note, please do not add me on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever else is out there. I do have a fan page for a reason, but I'm not active on it outside of just posting video links. I'm not really active on social media on other sites either, but to be honest, Facebook is probably the least active out of all the ones that I do have. As of right now, Blue Sky would be the most active, with Instagram coming in a close second. All of this is behind YouTube, of course, and everything major will always be posted on my community tab, like bigger updates. The biggest takeaway from this is that if you're only following me on YouTube, you aren't missing that much. Alright, cool. I guess this chapter is going to be a little bit on the shorter side compared to the last one, but I want to touch on one last thing before I move on. Mostly all of my good memories from this job came from the people I worked with. I know I had an impact on others too, because people still remember who I am even visiting 10 months later when I was capturing that B-roll footage. From like the people that I rarely talk to, by the way. I'm also kind of glad that some of my coworkers were promoted or moved on to newer jobs, whether it be within the company or outside of it. A lot of them deserve their promotions, and I know I did put in a good word for them when I was in a leadership role. Now, as for my friend who was in the movie that I just shot over the summer, he ended up leaving due to the same reason that I left, and that was due to the negative outweighing the positive for him. I am glad though that he's hopefully thriving in another state and at a completely new job, and we do still chat every week or so. He had a leaving party a few months ago, and I saw a ton of my coworkers at that as well, ready to send him off on his new journey. I guess that's the thing, even if we are no longer there, we all still have that weird connection with one another and still remember the good times we all had while moving towards our own futures. That's the hardest thing to do while leaving a job you've been at for so long, is that you don't know what's on the other side and what it's going to be like, but sometimes you just must take that leap of faith in order to get to these new destinations. You may be swimming for a bit, but it's better to jump off that ship that was no longer keeping you afloat. So, unfortunately, I will be ending this chapter a little bit on a negative note, but I wanted to talk about the toxic or terrible coworkers before moving on. The downside of any job is that high school drama still exists. It's okay to make friends at your job, but don't share too much of your personal life with others that you don't heavily trust already. I will admit that I made my fair share of mistakes at this job and previous jobs, and I will probably make mistakes in future jobs. Nobody is perfect, but I don't know why some people just have to drag you down with their failures too. I've talked about this Susan a few times in a few other videos, but this was one of the people that really strikes all the boxes in the negative and toxic coworker categories. To give you an idea, she hired in about a month after I did, and I never really had any issues with her. She did get the Monorail lead position the same time I did, but thanks to my seniority as a full-timer and a part-timer, I was getting way more lead shifts than her. I know one of her friends was saying that she wanted more lead hours so she can pay rent and stuff, and here's the thing is, I also know I screwed up as a lead, ended up losing my status, but here's the thing is, you got your more lead hours after that, but here's the thing is, after I lost my status, there was absolutely no reason to attack my family in the type of gossip and spreading rumor sort of way. Like, I would have let her take the W and let her have her lead shifts, but saying something so vile about my relationship with my wife and daughter, all while dragging other coworkers through the mud, is something that's not even close to tolerable. Here's the thing is, the only upside after I left is that she's no longer in attractions as she transferred to a different department, and I've heard a lot less drama is now in effect at the Monorail. Basically, no more drama after she left, so crazy, right? She unfortunately is one of those steps on others but won't get stepped on herself type of people. She didn't make me quit my job, by the way, as this all happened a few weeks after I lost my lead status. But all I can say is that after she decided to pull that lie against me and other coworkers, because she wasn't only attacking me, she was going up against other people as well, I ended up fighting back with HR and management, which really scared her straight. Yeah, basically I tattletaled for, a good reason. After that, she avoided me like the plague, and there's a lesson that step around me next time. Don't step on me when I'm already down. Anyway, she was just peak lazy, and that's the type of coworker that I hated. I know it sounds controlling, but we're all here to do a job. Just do the bare minimum, man. Seriously, the number of lazy coworkers I had post-pandemic really made me despise going to one of my 3 attractions. It wasn't just the laziness, but the cockiness of them doing their job wrong, and then telling me that I'm doing my job wrong even though I'm doing it right. It's not as bad as the chick who kept vaping her weed pen in the Monorail nose cone and stunk up the entire thing for everybody else. There are 2 things that I do not like, and that's lazy coworkers and coworkers who smoke weed on the job. Listen, I don't care if you're lazy outside of work, or I don't care if you do drugs outside of work, but seriously, man, when you're on the clock, just do your job so we don't get guests getting pissy at us later, okay? I could go on and on about this topic, but I don't want to keep talking negatively because most of the people I worked with were fantastic and I never had any issues with. This was just like a small handful of people, and there's unfortunately nothing you can do about that because high school drama is always going to exist at these types of jobs. But it's time to move on to the next chapter, my dudes. The next one will be just miscellaneous things that didn't really fit into their own category, but they're still related to the job. After that, we'll get into my overall feelings as well as the final goodbye. Miscellaneous things. There were a lot of little things that I can't really cover in their own designated video or chapter, so they're all going to get smushed into this chapter. I'll try to make sense of it as much as possible, but that didn't even make sense, so let's just dive on in, bro. Starting with parking. There are several different cast member lots, some of which them are, now guest lots, while others are technically both, and a lot of weirdness. For the sake of this, the main lots that I used were the cast member lot on Ball and the cast member lot on Harbor. There was also this one that was behind all the hotels on Harbor Boulevard right across from the park, but that was only for shifts that started before 6 a.m. when I finally got access to that parking lot over there. Anyway, when I hired in, I had to park over on Catella, but that was also shared with guests after a certain time, so after I couldn't find parking anymore, I started to park over on Harbor. Harbor was a good cast member lot, but that changed into a management custodial lot, so we got kicked over into Ball lot, which was the level 2 of the parking structure that normal guests can park in. So basically, they park on all the other levels, but we were on level 2. I parked there for pretty much a good half of my time at the resort, and that's where a lot of the good memories come from, which was walking to Ball after park closing. Mind you, I work in Tomorrowland, and Ball lot is behind Galaxy's Edge. So it was a little bit of huffing it, but we all worked Autopia, so what's a little extra walking going to do? Well, after returning from the pandemic, Ball was the only lot that I could park in, as Harbor was closed and the other one I didn't have access to yet. Not that I minded parking in Ball, but Harbor was so much nicer, and when it eventually reopened a little bit after the Monorail did, I started parking there again, but the downside of that is they closed the lot at freaking 8 p.m. or 2000, and I was off at 20:45, so I had to start parking in Ball again. It's okay though, because both Harbor lots and the Monorail started to close later, so I could get that nice parking lot back. While it was outdoors and non-shaded, it was nice because it dropped us off right where Tomorrowland was. The only downside is they didn't start running shuttles until 600 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I started at 5:30 in the morning, so yay. Luckily, when I got my leadership status, I finally got access to that lot behind the Harbor hotels, even though I should have had it to begin with, because other people can park there and it's not just a leader exclusive lot. But that's also when I started to use that parking lot to go park and go to the movies over at the Garden Grove Mall thingy. Yep, I would literally go repark my car from Harbor and go get free parking to watch a movie with my buddies. It made sense because it was right across the street and I already had access to park there, so whatever, man, who cares? Aside from my weird parking tangent, let's talk about the random ass goodies the companies would give us. Now, I'm not talking about Tomorrowland management, but I'm talking about the overall management of the company. They would randomly give us goodie bags or private parties. While I am grateful for these little like neat knickknacks and snacks, and this seems to be a distraction because these weirdly came around times when we had union votes. Also, the one we got to go into Cars Land for the night, they're like, hey, yeah, welcome back to work, but get back to work, teehee. You can't fool me, Disney people, I'm smarter than that. Alright, hey, but they also did have the Habit Burgers on Disneyland's anniversary, as well as chili on Walt Disney's birthday. That's neat, I guess. They also had backstage giveaways both on-site and online. And here's the funny part. The one time I actually won that stupid backstage giveaway thing for a $50 gift card at Target, I was on parental leave, so I never got to get that gift card, bro. They apparently gave it to my manager, and that manager, never gave it to me. I could have used those $50 for diapers or other baby crap. Whatever, man. Now let's get really random here. I remember when they gave us this option when Disney Plus launched for, either give us a free subscription to that or 16 free park entries with family and friends. Yeah, no brainer which one people took. It was neat though, since post-pandemic they gave us the Disney Plus Trio bundle for free on top of our park entries, and I used that to get the ad-free version of all these things, so I only paid $6 a month for Disney Plus and Hulu with no ads, so that was nice. We'd also get 2 complimentary tickets every summer and winter. Speaking of which, I do have 2 more left as of writing this, as that's how I've been getting into the park since I left. I ain't paying $200 for that. They funny. I also want to mention, as much flack as we give Disney and such, they had some goddamn fantastic healthcare packages for their full-time employees. I know there's this whole thing going on with healthcare in the news right now, but I really had some good benefits with my job thanks to the union and probably Disney in some aspect, but anyway, that's one of the reasons I didn't want to drop down to part-time when my wife went full-time at her job, because we had some really good health insurance. If it actually tells you anything, I was actually getting care for some of these health issues I had before I lost it, before dropping down to part-time. Now, also if it tells you anything, my current provider made me see 4 different doctors who actually couldn't see me, because now I'm finally getting real care for my real health issues, a year and a half later, but that's not important for now issues, okay? Basically, when I had Disney's insurance, I was able to get seen in the same week instead of having to wait an entire year and a half. Crazy, huh? There was also a lot of perks to being a cast member that don't really get brought up by people, like free schooling, discount on certain products, and the whole healthcare thing. Yeah, most of these were probably thanks to unions, but still. As useless as some people may think unions are, they do really stand up for you and stand up to the man, They are the reason that they got their higher wages earlier this year, so support unions if you are part of them, okay? I know this chapter is weird and all over the place, but we're almost done, I promise you. I guess the last thing I want to talk about is the fun thing we call refresh classes and knowledge shifts. Yeah, if you knew more than one attraction, you had to make sure you worked it at least every 4 to 6 months. They also did this refresh class every year to make sure you're on top of your attraction knowledge, even if you're always at that attraction. So while I primarily was at Monorail, I would try to at least work Autopia and Star Tours every, once in a while. Autopia being a few months and Star Tours being at least once a week, but sometimes once every 2 weeks. Toward the end of my time at the parks and after losing my status, I started to work a balance of all 3 of my attractions. I sort of liked having that balance of all 3, like, 1 here, 2 there, 2 there, or 1 here, 3 there, sort of like that. If it were really up to me though, I would like to do half my shift here and half my shift there, but it didn't really help that they had these guest show operations split shifts, and I would do that sometimes, but I wasn't a big fan of those, but they did give me hours when I was part-time. Most of my coworkers only knew 2 attractions, and while a few ended up knowing 3, and a handful knowing 4 or more. One of my leads actually knew every single attraction except Nemo. I wanted to learn Astro Orbiter as a 4th because they have the same costumes as Autopia, and we were also allowed to only check out 3 costumes at a time. Sadly, I only knew 3, and I'm not mad about it, but nor do I regret having my 3. I enjoyed all 3 of them equally, some more than others, so I technically wasn't equally, but I enjoyed all 3 of my attractions, okay? Now, for the attractions I didn't know in my land, this is the order I would have been okay with learning, starting with Astro, Buzz, Space, Nemo. Yeah, I'd rather go to the black hole of Space Mountain before you stick me in one of those terrible submarines. I know it sounds weird, and I know a lot of cast members from Nemo, but that ride seems so slow-paced it makes Monorail with one train look fast. Alright, enough dilly-dallying. It's time to get to the next chapter, which will be some Q&As. Q&As? While I only got one direct question for this portion of the video specifically, I will be throwing in some ones that didn't really fit in the miscellaneous section either, as well as some others that are just generally asked questions outside of my videos, like friends and family going, "Hey, did this ever happen?" sort of thing. So let's go ahead and get started with our only set of questions that was sent in for this entire run of the series. This one is from Mid-Century 43. They ask a total of 3 questions. Question number 1. What park do you personally enjoy more, Disneyland or California Adventure? And then personal favorite at each. Question number 2. Any attractions or positions you wish you worked, like after dark events, parades, characters, retail? And then question number 3. When parking, I've noticed they never send guests to the Daisy Duck Coco levels in the garage, which they would get sent to a lot when they were young. They asked to see him, both that and the downtown Disney lot became cast member parking sometime in 2019, and guest parking for the later move to Simba. But the pedestrian bridge that connects Coco to downtown Disney is accessible to guests. They mainly asked this because Disney is known for keeping cast areas backstage or off limits to guests, and it's weird that they're openly breaking that rule. They also enjoy the channel and they look forward to where I'm going from here. So yeah, let's go ahead and answer those questions. Now, just a note, I already did answer their questions in a comment, but I figured I would share my answers in this video as well. So for their first question, I basically said, personally I enjoy Disneyland more, but I've always started at DCA first to hit the bigger rides. My favorite Disneyland attraction would have to be Rise of the Resistance, and my favorite California Adventure attraction would have to be Mission Breakout. I do prefer thrill rides, but I do have a soft spot for the attractions I worked. I actually have a hidden tier list from what I like from S to F in my side tangent video on my Disney Parks video, but maybe I'll put it up right now while I'm talking about this segment. We will see. The answer to their second question would be, honestly, I couldn't see myself outside of attractions unless it was a backstage office job. I did really wish that I got to work over at DCA, especially at Guardians or Racers, but I don't regret my time in Tomorrowland at all. I loved working all 3 of my attractions, but Monorail was pretty much my second home. I did not like working guest show operations at all, especially the Halloween Scream show, and if you listen to my weird guest stories from Guest Control, you'll know why. So I've kind of already answered this question earlier in the video, but since I wrote this video weird, whatever, man. It's let's just answer their third and final question. So basically, the second level of the ball lot, which is the Daisy Coco level, is technically for cast members, and I used to park there a ton when I was a CM because the lot in Harbor wasn't open yet, or it just wasn't available yet, or was no longer available, pre-pandemic. But they didn't actually reopen Harbor lot until like, I want to say 2022-ish. I want to say like a little bit like, I mean, no, they opened it late 2021, but besides the point. Technically, guests can park in the cast member lot, and they do occasionally put overflow parking in that lot during the holiday season, like the end of December mainly. Now, the bridge that connects downtown Disney to the Pixar lot, that's part of the ball lot, is technically accessible to everyone. Just because it's on the cast member lot doesn't mean you can't cross over it. And honestly, I would actually use it all the time when I would come in as a guest, as I normally take the monorail into this park from the downtown Disney station. It's way less of a hassle than trams. The security's less of a wait, especially in the morning. But that's just a little secret between you and me, guys, so don't go tell anybody, okay? And the parking lot's technically one of those on-stage areas, even if it is a cast member lot. But it's also considered backstage. But basically, if you see cast members in the parking lot that aren't like in the parking attendant uniform, then they're probably just going back home, and you're probably on the wrong level, unless you were put in there for overflow parking. But I'm going on a side tangent for this question's answer. Anyway, there are backstage areas in the parking structure behind like the tram loading area, but it's mainly just a big break room and nothing too special. So that pretty much wraps it up for the only viewer submitted question. So now we're going to move over to questions that I'm making up for the sake of this video, but I have been asked before outside of YouTube, like friends and family asking me these questions. So let's go ahead and start with the first questions, shall we? The first question would be, did you meet any big names like celebrities, content creators, influencers, etc.? You know, there was a handful of famous people that I did encounter at my job at Disneyland, but per the policy, we treated them like every other guest, nothing special. We couldn't really talk to them about their work or their shows, and I would say a vast majority of us were respectful to that rule, but sometimes, you know, some of us would break that rule and be like, oh my god, I loved you in this, but then be like, okay, go to number 4 or whatever. Not that saying that's a big deal, but anyway, I didn't really get to meet many celebrities. I saw more influencers and content creators. Most of the time this was around VidCon, so it makes more sense, you know, for that period. I remember actually one day at Autopia, like 2019, VidCon, we had a impromptu photo shoot for our 3rd and 4th track because we weren't running that, because all these influencers kept waiting in our line to take pictures in the cars, and then once they got their picture, they would get out of the car and then just leave the attraction, and we basically kept having to fill empty spots. So it got to the point where we're like, hey, if you're an influencer, please, or you want to take pictures with the cars and that's it, please go over here. We ended up doing that for like a good hour. It was like a little impromptu photo shoot so these people would stop messing with our flow, man. Anyway, I also did have a nice conversation with Jon Favreau, you know, the guy who directed Iron Man, Mandalorian, and basically, because he does visit the park frequently, and I accidentally met him backstage behind Star Tours as I was coming back from my lunch. Not saying he approached me, but I was just like, oh, I'm sorry to bug you, but like, I was just letting him know that I really enjoyed some of his more like forgotten films, especially like Zathura, and I know that sounds like a really niche film, but I don't know, I do like that one. And then I was talking about his other works too, and then I was just like telling him that I also make my own films, and like he is one of the few directors that do kind of inspire my work, I guess you could say. He's not the main director, but he's like in like my top like 5 directors that I do look up to. And I was just letting him know that, and he was extremely nice about it, and he went on his way for the night after that, but he did give me some good advice. So other than, you know, him, I did meet Josh Tomorrow, you know, the guy in charge of parks and resorts, when I was training at the Monorail in early 2020, but because he was sitting in the nose cone on my way back from downtown Disney, or to downtown Disney. Basically, he was only doing a one-way trip, and I know he's not really a celebrity, but he was really nice and very friendly, and he was actually at downtown Disney when they originally laid us off for the pandemic, and he was like really feeling bad for what he did, but you know, I know he's one of those higher up suits, so I get it. Not everyone's gonna like him, but he seemed really nice in person. Now, much nicer than Bob Chapek, who I actually met at Autopia when we kind of first got Fast Pass in early 2020. And I was just like, hey, how are you? Because I was in a position that I didn't really have to, you know, I was at the lift position, so I wasn't really doing much, and he came up and I was just like, hey, how are you? And then he basically sort of brushed me off when I introduced myself. It was really kind of rude, but kind of was like, hey, how are you? And he's like, ugh. And then he walked off. I was just like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize us poors can't talk to you people. And other than that, There was a few like YouTubers that I recognized, but I wasn't going to be like, oh my god, you're this person. But I was just like, hey, and that was about it. Now the next question I've probably answered in previous videos, but I do like talking about it and what my favorite position to work at each of the attractions that I knew. And then starting off with Autopia, which was my higher end attraction, my favorite has to be both the grouper position and Auto 3. Auto 3 is that position that's stationed in the off-road section of the attraction next to the Matterhorn, if anyone was wondering, sorry. Grouper is also my favorite because it kept me on my feet and allowed me to keep the attraction moving. That's one of the few positions at the attraction that's like, hey, go to this number, okay, cool. I mean, they're kind of like pretty much the whole entire flow of the attraction. If you have a bad grouper, your line can shoot up from 5 minutes to like an hour, and I've seen it happen multiple times. That's why I like being grouper, because I can keep it at that nice flow, at least on my tracks. And then Auto 3 because it's for the opposite reason, because I can just turn off my brain and daydream. Now next up would be for the monorail, and this would be obviously the driver. I loved driving the trains. I would be happy if you stuck me in the train for my entire shift, and I have been stuck in the train for my entire shift. Not like in a good way, but like the attraction broke down and I was stuck in there for a good a couple of hours, so that was still fine with me, man. But I do wish that I got to experience having the guests up front with me one last time, because post-pandemic they didn't bring it back until like half a year after I left, or like a few months after I left, which is a shame, but I did get to experience it for about a month before the shutdown, so it was nice. Other than driver, this is not really a position, but I did enjoy my time as the lead because every day was actually different and it required a little bit more problem solving, and I do like the positions that make you think a little bit more, even if lead is not technically a position, it's more of a title, I guess. But I like being in both the positions where I'm completely brain dead and I don't have to think, or the positions that really made me think at the end of the day. Now last up would be Star Tours, and if you're expecting a pattern, that's because you are. I liked being cabin, which is their grouper. The whole playing, Tetris with the guests and the whole 8, 8, 7, 8, 9 seating arrangement. Also, launching the cabins I really enjoyed. Aside from, that, I did enjoy like tower, and that's not actually like a turn your brain off position, but you're sitting there watching the cameras and basically making sure everyone's not doing anything stupid on the ride and such. And I did heavily enjoy watching people making the stupidest faces like nobody's watching them while in Star Tours, because there's infrared cameras on those suckers and we can see exactly what you're doing. But shh, don't tell anyone that I said that. And then on top of that, I was also thrusted in this position a lot, either indirectly because whenever a fire alarm would go off, which was quite frequently because people don't know how to stop vaping indoors. So whenever the fire alarm went off, I had to take over for the newer cast members, or the cast members that weren't 100% confident with that position, because I unfortunately knew what I was doing. Even like it was like my third week signed off, and someone that has been there longer than me made me take over because they're like, I can't deal with this. I don't know, I guess I just have that that aura around me that says, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Now the next question would be, what's your favorite type of day and least favorite? So my favorite type of day would have to actually be the rainy days before at Autopia before Fast Pass. And now, as weird as it sounds, just standing in the pouring rain chatting with my coworkers was really relaxing. And I know we're all getting wet, but it was just like weirdly nice and relaxing. I don't know how to describe it. This would also go for those PR shifts I did when I was working Autopia, when the attraction was under refurbishment, so I was just paid to stand there for 8 hours and tell everyone to go away because they didn't want to put up walls. But other than that, I did enjoy downtimes at the monorail, were sort of, relaxing in their own right, aside from being at the entrance where people would get mad at you because we were closed for like the weather, because they can't run in the heat because the AC we don't got no AC on the monorail. So now a neutral answer would be the busy days where everything was business as normal. No breakdowns, no guest issues, no wacky breaks. Everything just worked. These were actually kind of rarer days, as there would always be that like one thing that went wrong, but not like a bad going wrong, but like something just breaking down. But like the days where absolutely nothing out of the ordinary happened, which I mean, ride breakdowns not breaking, rides not breaking down is out of the ordinary, but that's ordinary on paper. This whole experience would probably be leaning more positive than negative, but hey man, I know it sounds counterintuitive to like the breakdown, the non-breakdown days, but those days where you just worked and nothing happened were very neutral and very positive. Lastly, my least favorite type of days were the short staff days. This was weirdly and primarily always at Star Tours with a specific lead, because not that this lead was bad, by the way, it's just that they like sending everyone home to get their labor budget way under what it was supposed to be. And also the attractions can technically run on a skeleton crew, but it's not fun. And it's not fun to operate when we are on a skeleton crew, but hey, it's good enough to operate the attraction. Dropping turnstile and making cabins grab their own people works just as fine, I guess. But anyway, these days would suck because I would be stuck in the same position for almost 3 hours and get my break late, and sometimes I almost hit my 5th hour with my lunch on these days. But being stuck in the same position wasn't bad. Like, there's some positions that I'm like, okay, I'll be stuck here for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I don't care. But when you're stuck at merge for an hour and a half, like the position that merges lightning lane into the regular standby with everybody else, yeah, they would just sit there and stare at you like, why isn't the line moving? I paid to be in this line. I'm like, well, we're only running 2 cabins. Like, what do you want me to do about it? Yeah, good times, man. I did also experience a lot of short-staffed nights at the monorail, both as a regular cast member and as a lead, but those felt somewhat manageable because we sort of all knew what we were doing. At least when I was a cast member before I was a lead, but when I was a lead, there were just points where I'm just like, F it, I'm just gonna do it myself, man. Now, I've sort of already answered this question, but working attractions outside of your land, honestly, yes and no. To further expand upon this question, because it's already been asked before, is that, yeah, I've always wanted to work Mission Breakout and Radiator Springs Racers, hell, even Incredicoaster or Grizzly Rapids. Like, I wanted to work like one of these bigger attractions, because I also know over at California Adventure they were a little bit more lenient on variety, whereas in Tomorrowland they pretty much said, you're stuck at Space Mountain and that's all you're gonna ever see, ha 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 ha. Like, if they let me have a balance, I would have probably been okay with going over to space. But the other thing with California Adventure is they're on a different contract in quotation marks, so, and also it's a different land, different park, so I would have lost my seniority if I went over to California Adventure. Plus, I wouldn't have been able to change where I ended up, because when you hire in, they kind of just like, this is where you're going, and like, oh, okay, I guess I don't get a say. While Autopia was never on my radar to begin with before hiring, and I just like, please do not send me to the submarines. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot Autopia existed, But I'm glad I got the chance to work it, and Monorail ended up becoming my overall favorite to work with, Star Tours being a nice change of pace from the other two. So, yeah, I would like to have done something else, but just at the end of the day, like, just more variety, man. I'd like to be at all 3 of my attractions for my work week. Now, this is going to be the final question. Did you have a favorite vehicle, train, or speeder to work? And I know this sounds very niche, but there were certain favorites I had. Starting off with Autopia. My favorite car was actually, I think it's like Power 81. I believe it's a purple or brown Dusty. I'm not 100% sure. This has been a while. The only reason I liked this car was because the chassis attached to the vehicle wasn't fully bolted down to the base of the car. So if you pulled on the grab bar, the entire chassis would come up with it. And it was hilarious every time I saw that freaking car, man. Because also, when people were driving it, the chassis was going rup, 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 as it was driving by. I'm just like, that's gonna fly off like on a super windy day, and I'm surprised it hasn't already. Now, I don't know if it's still like that today, but I can tell you that it was like that when I left, and it was even like that before the pandemic. So it was just getting worse and worse as time was moving on. But who knows? Maybe they'll finally replace that guy, because I know Otto is rumored to go electric, but I'll believe it when I see it. Okay. Now, there's also this green Susie that has some fire damage on its back area, as the engine caught fire when a guest was pretty much just holding down the pedal, and they kind of blew out the engine, and it caught fire, and the guest was like, well, I don't know why it's getting so hot. It's like, bro, you freaking caught the car on fire. And one of my friends from the attraction, he was like, oh my god, and he freaking ran over there with the fire extinguisher. And he put out the flames, and it was just, I know it sounds funny seeing a guest in danger, but it wasn't like a huge fire, by the way. It was just like, they would have been able to get out within like, 10 seconds. It wasn't like the car was gonna blow up type of fire. It was just like, whoa, that was crazy type of like blowback with the flames. And there's a permanent burn mark on the chassis around like where the engine's at. Yeah, and yeah, that car is still in rotation, by the way. So, just if you ever see a green Susie at the attraction, just know that I witnessed that engine catch on fire, and just it brings back dumb memories, I guess. Now, next up would weirdly be Cabin A, or Cabin 1 at Star Tours. No one liked working this cabin because of how cramped it is inside the loading area, or the flight deck as we called it, and it was notorious for going down a lot. We gave it the nickname Cabin 101 because of how frequently it would break down. Now, 101 means the attraction is broken down, or needs maintenance to come look at something. Just theme park lingo, if anyone was curious. I also trained at that cabin a lot, and it never ever had people signing up for it when it came to Group Wars, meaning that you could stay in the same position for an hour if you signed up for these. So, of course, I love that cabin, man. Lastly, we get down to the monorail trains. Monorail Blue is the best train, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It had the best controls, and it would have a little bit of a slide, like a sliding glide when you're coming into the station. Ooh, it was just so buttery smooth. It also had the best AC, and obviously blue is my favorite color of the three. I like blue, orange, and white, so. And then, and no surprise, Monorail Orange is my second favorite because it's the color orange, and it was like the only train that didn't really break down a lot, at least. I've had the least amount of technical issues with it, and I know that sounds weird because blue is my favorite, but orange is, it's pretty good. It's my buddy's favorite train, but don't let him know that that I'm saying it's a good train, because I also have a sentimental value with Monorail Orange because it was the last train I closed before I quit. So that was the last train I put away for the night on my last day of working there. But then there's Monorail Red. I've gotten the most technical issues in that demon train. I've been towed in Monorail Blue and Monorail Orange, but Monorail Red took the cake. I've been towed in that freaking demon train so many times. That train has gotten so many e-stops and so many technical issues that you wouldn't even begin to believe how much of a problem child that train is. To be fair, it was the first Mark 7 on the main line, but still though, it's just like, I hated that train. It was also the only train that I know of, at least during my time there, where the load tire blew up on the grade and shattered the windows in the fourth cabin. Like, literally the plasticky glass windows, they shattered because that's how loud the load tires popping was. That I was at the downtown station, so I didn't actually hear it, but it tells you how much of a pain that train is, where it pretty much made a bunch of guests deaf because of how loud this load tire blew up. So my point stands that it goes blue, orange, tractor, red. Yep, I put the damn tow tractor above red because at least the tractors work. So that's going to wrap it up for this Q&A section. Now, if you do have any questions, I will still try to answer them as best I can in the comments below on any of the episodes in this series. So if you ever have a question, feel free to ask, man. Obviously there's some things like that I can't legally talk about, but you know, if you have a question, feel free to ask and I'll let you know if I can answer it or not. With either an answer, I was like, oh sorry, I can't talk about that. Like, I can't tell you how to turn off cars or what buttons to press. Like, obviously I can't tell you that, but hey. And then there's also another factor, just I know this sounds sort of obvious, but with time, I might not remember certain things, so don't be asking something like hyper specific 10 years after this video comes out. So just be wary of when you're asking this question and the published date of this video. So anyway, let's move on to the next few chapters of this episode. The year after. We're finally at the main point of this video. You know, what I've been up to the past year, as well as how I feel a year later. If you've been following the entire series, let alone following my channel, the obvious would be making videos. This series has been constantly releasing every single month since January, with this current episode that you're watching right now or listening to being the very last one. So from January to December, at least this series has been consistent, coming out every single month. So that's one of the many things that I have been up to, obviously. I've also released a ton of different videos over the past year. I started a new video game review series. I sort of enhanced my video essay series, especially getting a teleprompter after being yelled at by the comments on my Adobe video. And I've created various episodes for already existing series and even made new skits and sketches and everything in between, you know. This has been one of my most active years as a creator since I originally started back in 2008, I believe. I would recommend checking out some of the other videos I've made if you are interested, of course. I know some of you only came for this. I even just recently released a video on my entire workflow and I explain how I make videos from start to finish, so that would also probably be an interesting thing to look at if you do like this series, because I do talk about this series a little bit in that video. So hopefully one of those end cards popped up or something. The most significant video achievement that I did this year would have to be both writing and filming my third feature film. Well, I don't expect it to release anytime soon, as I'm barely starting on post-production and it's going to take a hot moment or a bit, but it's still a major accomplishment for me because, you know, despite all the odds and the busyness with schedules, I was able to squeak out a full-length feature film. Like, to give you an idea, we have about 4.5 hours of footage, pretty much a half a terabyte worth of stuff. And now I'm doing voice acting stuff right now for it, so I am starting post-production on it, so hopefully I'll have it out in 2025, but we'll see how my free time goes and how life goes, you know how it is. Other than videos, you know, personal life has been good. While I haven't gotten any new luck with finding a new job or career yet, I have been enjoying my time with my daughter. Being a full-time parent is exhausting, but it's well worth it, you know. I've also slightly talked about pursuing my second degree, but in animation. Maybe some animations are playing for B-roll footage, but that's also why I made that most recent Hero animation, the Hero's Terrible anime. I would recommend giving that a watch because it's a really wacky storyboard / animation hybrid thing. I would just give it a watch even if you haven't seen the series, because it stands on its own, but it's also like a good nod to those who have been watching the Hero series. I made that for my digital painting class for just funsies, because we were already doing something like, hey, this is what the scene's gonna look like, but I'm like, I'm gonna take it further, I'm gonna actually make this. So I've also started to get my physical health in better check. While it's not obvious with my weight, especially since a lot of my stuff is recorded sometimes months in advance, my weight's been going down slightly, and my wrist pain has been getting not as extreme as it was at the beginning of the year, but it is starting to feel better. This has also just been a good reset point for my life and such, to really think about things. And in terms of videos and YouTube, I was hoping to get to that 3,000 watch hours mark threshold by the end of this year, but I don't realistically think that will happen unless y'all watching right now decide to go watch some of my backlog. But I'm not pressuring anyone to do that. If you wanna help me get there, then cool. But if you don't, and you only came for this series, that's also fine, man. I'm just glad that you're listening this far into this dumb little podcast I got going on. That's the thing is, obviously I would love to do this as a job, but that's why I'm working on my actual goals, as YouTube will always just be a hobby for me, most likely. And not that that's my audience's fault, by the way. This is just how it is, that I've always enjoyed making videos, and as much time and quote-unquote money I lose on this, I'm still having fun making my stuff. Now, the only exception with this series, I do always try to have a high quality with my videos, make my videos with quality in mind. Not that these videos are bad, because these are probably my most well-written videos in terms of, I'm just reading off a bunch of words on a paper, and I'm improvising on this a little bit, so this episode may feel a little bit more relaxed, but all the episodes, the writing process is probably the longest part, while my other videos, the editing process is the longest part. So yeah, I also refuse to make shorts on my channel, and I know they would grow my subscriber count, and I could hit that, a million threshold, but chasing that type of rush in a short form content was just not only having a negative impact on my regular content that I've been producing, because the algorithm pushes shorts over regular videos if you make both, but it's just I couldn't do that mentally to myself, man. Plus, if I'm going to spend the time doing these dumb little shorts, I might as well spend the extra time polishing up regular videos instead of trying to chase these inflated numbers that shorts have versus regular content does. I did get extremely close to 3,000, but not enough to push past it. I think I was at one point like 95 hours away. So, I'm still having fun. I had fun, and that's all that matters to me when making content at the end of the day. Aside from personal life and what I've been up to, I guess it's time to get to the real question of, how do I feel about, being gone from my job for over a year? Well, the thing is, I do miss it, and I did enjoy my job, and I will say that a year later. The thing, though, is that change is necessary sometimes, and it won't always come for you. Sometimes you have to make change yourself. While I did have my reasons for leaving that I will get into in a moment or something, the biggest thing that I left for was that I just needed change. At the end of the day, it was always a job, and I didn't want to be stuck there for another few years, especially if I was never going to be a lead again, realistically. The hard truth is that, things may have gone differently for me if certain events didn't happen. If I didn't act like a complete idiot while I was being a lead and just sucked up to management and kissed their butt, I would have probably still been there. Didn't do anything stupid that would have pissed them off or go against them, even though if it was for safety, I still feel like I soured my relationship with them. But I can't stand by and be a suck up, okay? And if I never had my kid, I probably would have moved back closer to my job. But the thing is, I don't regret that at all. In fact, I'm glad that I have my kid, because I enjoy every second with her. And here's the thing is, at the end of the day, I wouldn't have it any other way, man. Just, there's a lot of what ifs, but there are things that I don't regret. And at the end of the day, I'd rather do what's important for my mental health and my family's health. And if that means leaving a job that I no longer enjoy, then that's what it comes down to. The main thing was that they didn't want to work with my seniority, and they didn't give me the one request that I asked for, which was I only wanted to work Friday mornings and weekends were fine. Like, I was on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday schedule, but with my seniority, I should have been getting Friday mornings. Or just work me Thursdays instead. But they're like, oh, we can't do that. Because, my wife works Monday through Friday, and I don't have a sitter except for like certain days. And I kept having to call out of my shifts and basically use all the accrued sick time and vacation time to get out of these shifts because I was unable to trade with coworkers most of the time. Like, nobody, as weird as it sounds, nobody wants to trade their off day for Friday or trade their mornings for Friday nights. Like, I get it 100%. And the thing was, management didn't really help either because they just kept telling me to go to the scheduler, or the scheduler just kept telling me to go to management, and then it got to the point where it's like, they're just not respecting seniority and they don't want to work with me, okay? Like, I don't know why you can be flexible with others, but you can't be flexible with people that actually show up and do their job. And the thing is, I had a ton of coworkers get fired for attendance, and yeah, some of them did deserve it because they never showed up, but most of them is because they weren't getting their seniority respected. Like, I had a lot of coworkers that hired in before me that were having the same issue. They weren't getting their seniority respected. And at the end of the day, basically, I said this in the last paragraph, but my daughter is more important than my job at the end of the day. Like, I'd rather leave this dead-end job than stay there and not be able to spend time with my family at the end of the day. Aside from the obvious reason for leaving for family reasons, the way I was being treated by management and the way I saw things going didn't really seem favorable to working anymore. Yes, I missed some of the people that I worked with, but even some of them left after me. Like, they were going to leave eventually too. Like, no one's gonna stay at their job forever, and if they do, then they have more willpower than I do, because I couldn't be in attractions for 30 plus years. That just seems exhausting, man. Here's the thing is also the working environment, it changed so drastically from when I hired in. It didn't seem like the same care was being put into things like they used to be, and that was another factor. Lazy coworkers and terrible management will kill any motivation to stay at any job like this. It didn't help that I also had these terrible write-up under my belt because of when I lost my lead status. I got this write-up, and that write-up pretty much wouldn't drop off after a year after I lost it. So realistically, even if I lost the write-up, it's still on my record that, hey, this guy got a write-up. So, and with that write-up in effect, it didn't allow me to promote, it didn't allow me to transfer, and it even gave me a slight headache when dropping down to part-time, because I thought, oh, they're not going to let me drop down to part-time because I have this write-up. But luckily they're like, we're going to make this exception one time. It's just like, that's so stupid, man. So yeah, I do still feel the same way from when I left over a year ago. It also just confirms my belief when I heard people getting promoted that absolutely didn't deserve it, and then people getting fired that absolutely didn't deserve it. All while the attractions were in stupid working condition, and the uptick of toxicity, toxic people from both the people you work with and the customers that are showing up. And it absolutely does not help that they keep raising these prices every year, and even have this new stupid lightning lane that lets you go to the attraction whenever you want. Like, that just causes another headache of issues, man. Like, I couldn't imagine. The thing was that it was just time to go, and staying any longer would have led to me being obviously fired or more depressed than I already was. I don't regret leaving then, and I don't regret leaving a year later. Now that just leaves to another question of, would I do it over again, or would I start over, like if I could go back in time and start over? And the thing is, yes and no, as weird as it sounds. Obviously, getting the chance to do over anything, that's just not on our human nature, but the thing is, we all grow from these experiences, and we take these past experiences and we use them to shape ourselves into the future. I would honestly go back to my old job if I had no other options left, of course. But that's why it's technically a yes and a no. The thing is, I did enjoy my job, but if I had to go back, it would be for a different department. As you may know, I am a filmmaker, so this would be like me going into their entertainment department most likely, but I prefer to stay independent because there's way more freedom making your own stuff. But of course I will take a career that will support my family over anything else. So the thing is, nothing is off the table in terms of returning, but I would not go back to the same exact job unless it was a last resort. And I hope to the great Mickey Mouse in the sky that I get put in a different land if that ended up being the case. Like, please, for the love of Mickey Mouse, do not put me back in Tomorrowland. I couldn't do it again. With all of that, it's time to just give my final goodbye to the attractions in my own sort of way that I couldn't really do as I left, as I could only work one of the 3 attractions I had on my final day. So it's going to be sort of corny, but if you made it this far, you're probably willing to hear me out for the rest of the video a little bit longer, or you're just running this in the background on accident, and you know, regardless, let's head into the final station of our journey against this metaphorical train or something. The final farewell. Starting with Star Tours, this was my safe attraction. Well, it was my 3rd attraction and my final one that I learned. I never really had a bad day here. Yes, obviously some days were harder than others, but that's always expected with any job. So thank you, Star Tours, and the great people that I worked with there. Literally 0 complaints. So let's give my final spiel for cabin launch. Hello folks, and welcome to Flight 1401. If I can have your attention please, we are going to conduct a quick safety check and then we'll get our flight started. That's the part where they would take the rebel spy picture, but I don't say this part in my spiel obviously. Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and check out those seatbelts. This is when then I would go to the panel and make sure all the seats lit up, and if they didn't, then I go, hey, buckle up your seatbelt in this row, you know. And then after that, I would go to everybody and go, okay, first row, tug on that yellow tab, 2nd row, 3rd row, 4th row. After all that, I would then say, all right, folks, I hope you enjoy your flight amongst the stars. And then I would go off script from the thing that we're supposed to say, and I would say my favorite joke. I'm like, hey, you know what they say in space, right? Then I would awkwardly pause for a moment, and someone would go, what? And I go, nothing, bye. And then I'd close the door, and the lights would go out, and the pretty much the ride would start. So it was a dumb joke, but it was one of my favorites. Okay, it's corny, man. So I say this: goodbye, Star Tours. You were a great attraction to work and a fun attraction to ride. But god damn, I hate cleaning glasses. So there is absolutely no reason why we have to clean the freaking entire resort's 3D glasses. Like, we weren't just cleaning Star Tours ones, we were also cleaning Toy Story's glasses and Spider-Man's glasses, and what's the other one, the Mickey Mouse one, their glasses. Yeah. Yes, Autopia, my higher-end attraction and the one that I knew the longest. You were actually my favorite to work until eventually learning my other 2 attractions, because I learned that there's other better things to work at. While I did make a lot of my lifelong friends here and enjoyed it mostly pre-pandemic, it still does have a special place in my memory bank. So let's go ahead and end with a spiel as you enter the station. Welcome back, Autopia drivers. We hope you enjoyed your drive along the Highway of Tomorrow. You're about to enter the loading and unloading zone. For your safety and the safety of other drivers, please do not bump or push the vehicle in front of you. As you enter the station, a cast member will direct you to a parking spot, so be sure to watch and listen for instructions. Once again, do not bump or push the vehicle in front of you. On behalf of the pit crew members here at Autopia, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day here at the Disneyland Resort. Beep beep. Of course I knew that one very well. I wasn't even looking at the script. Yeah, mine was a little bit different than the fancy card that they gave us at the PA stations, but it still gets the message across, and it pretty much is almost identical to it, except I did change a few things to make more grammatical sense, I guess. And I would also do that in like different voices too sometimes. I would go like with the welcome back Autopia drivers or something stupid like that. My favorite was my 1940s radio announcer, but anyway, you know, goodbye Autopia. You were fun to work until the dumb new hires came in and the piss poor trainers ruined you, man. Yeah, let's go ahead and move over to my most worked attraction and the one that I actually worked one last time before clocking out. Oh, Monorail. You were my favorite by the end of the day. The people, the operations, and the slightly extra pay bump of 40 cents for hazard pay. This was pretty much my second home post-pandemic, and mostly all the people I worked with at Autopia or Star Tours would always be up here. You know, all the memories I had here, both good and bad, I would not replace. I would do a final spiel here, but, you know, I kind of got that out of my system on the last day, but I will talk about some other stuff before I go. Monorail was one of the biggest reasons it was hard to leave, but it was also the reason that I did leave. I had my ups and my downs here, but that's just how it is sometimes. I'll just leave off with my final call that I ever made at my job. Monorail Orange is 10-7 in the shop, and Monorail Josh is now 10-7 with the company. Good night and goodbye, everyone. It's been real fun. Yeehaw! Now, you see, the yeehaw was there because we used to do cowboy accents on the radio calls sometimes, and boy, the goddamn laughs we would get from both the Monorail cast shop, like the maintenance team for the Monorail, and our own cast members at the Monorail with all these stupid dumb calls. We'd be like, Monorail right entering the park, yeehaw! That's a big old 10-4 partner, yeehaw! Or it's a big old Texas 10-4 partner, yeehaw! It was just like so much fun, and I know management hated us doing that, but like, bro, nobody's listening to this. Like, let us have our fun, okay? And the best night was probably when the Monorail maintenance team was just like, bring that big old boy in the shop, yeehaw! Good times, partner. Alright, I've stretched this episode out far enough, and I'll just leave with one message to those wanting to work at Disneyland. Why? I'm just kidding. It's not a bad job, and I would recommend it to those brave enough to endure it. Just don't expect the stars when the company can barely provide the moon. Goodbye, Disneyland. It's been fun. I'll see you around. Yeehaw. That's going to conclude this episode, as well as this series. My cast member journey is now complete, and this will be the last video that discusses it in this type of detail. Yes, obviously, future videos may have references or mentions that I used to work here, but, you know, nothing like this series will be produced on this channel moving forward. So basically, you know, I won't be doing like full videos on what my time as a cast member was like, as this is what the series was for. It was a one and done type of series, and I feel like 12 episodes is good enough. I'm not gonna sit there and milk it on my channel. Now, that being said, if you did join me at the beginning of this series, you know, or somewhere in the middle, or even you just joined me for this video, thank you for listening and watching and such. I do really appreciate everybody who listened to my stories and kind of got an understanding of how my time at the parks was like. Now that leads me to my next thing real quick. If you only came for the cast member videos, it's quite alright, okay? You were just on the metaphorical train to enjoy the ride from one point to another. If this is your stop, I thank you for riding along for this brief period of my channel. This is where I'm going to sound like the reverse of a YouTuber or the exact opposite of, you know, these creators on this platform, and actually suggest that you unsubscribe if you only came for this series specifically. Now, if you did enjoy this series and you want to help support my channel and you want to stick around, I ask that you either look through some of my massive back catalog of content or await my future projects, or a little bit of both. If this was the only series that you watched and you are interested, I do recommend the newer playlist, like new to the channel playlist, and kind of gives you a grab bag of all my miscellaneous videos and series of the channel. It doesn't have any of these episodes in there, so you won't have to worry about, you know, getting a repeat of something you've already listened to. And plus, with playlists, you can always skip a video if you're not interested. But that's all I ask, is if you did enjoy this and you do like these videos, and you do want to continue supporting my stupid stuff on this channel, then by all means go check everything out. But if this was the only thing you came for, and that's quite alright too, man. Like, I have no hard feelings towards those who only came for this and that's it. Like, seriously, thank you everybody for listening to this dumb little series that I have. Now, if you did like this series like format, like you liked me just talking over B-roll footage or something like that, I honestly don't see myself making anything like this in the future, because I prefer to put my efforts into bigger videos, but I may do something closer to my side tangent series without the heavy editing, like just me talking in front of a camera and maybe just chatting about certain topics, but not getting too detailed with the visuals. So I don't know, that's just something I'm considering, but we'll see in the future. But anything like this series probably won't be produced again. So regardless, thank you for watching to all my viewers. That even goes to those of you that are getting off at this metaphorical train stop. Well, this is probably the part of the video that has end cards if you weren't playing this in the background or something. So here's a playlist, some playlists that I'd recommend checking out if you are sticking around. I do also have my main socials down in the description below if you want to follow me on Blue Sky or Instagram or whatever. Alright, that's enough talking. I'm just gonna go now. Thanks for watching and so long.